After the family dinner, my wife came home with my daughter-in-law's phone by mistake. In the middle of the night, we woke up after 37 calls from my son and soldiers at my door. My wife whispered desperately, "You won't believe what I found here." Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Austin, and at 61 years old, I thought I knew everything about my family. I thought I understood the man I had raised, the values I had instilled in him, and the legacy I would leave behind. I was wrong about everything. It started on a Tuesday evening in October, during what should have been a perfectly ordinary family dinner. My wife Layla had spent hours preparing Tyler's favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings, and our dining room felt warm and inviting with the autumn candles flickering on the table. Tyler, our 34-year-old son, sat across from us with his wife Everly, their 2 children chattering happily about school and weekend plans. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did during these monthly gatherings. Tyler spoke passionately about the charitable organization he and Everly had founded 3 years earlier, Hearts for Hope Foundation. I felt that familiar swell of pride listening to him describe their latest project, a community center for underprivileged children. My son, the humanitarian. My son who had chosen to dedicate his life to helping others instead of chasing money like so many of his peers. "We're hoping to break ground next spring," Tyler explained, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "The City Council finally approved our proposal, and we've secured most of the funding through private donations." Everly nodded beside him, her blonde hair catching the candlelight as she reached for her water glass. "It's been challenging, but seeing the impact we're making on these families makes every sleepless night worth it." I glanced at Layla, catching the soft smile on her face. We had raised our son right. Despite the struggles of his teenage years, despite the moments when we wondered if we were failing as parents, Tyler had grown into a man we could be proud of. A man who understood that success wasn't measured in dollar signs, but in the lives you touched. After dinner, as we said our goodbyes in the driveway, I noticed the usual chaos of departure. Coats being gathered, children's toys being stuffed into bags, last-minute conversations about upcoming plans. In the midst of it all, phones were set down on the kitchen counter, picked up again, and somehow in the shuffle, Layla accidentally grabbed Everly's phone instead of her own. We didn't realize the mistake until we were already home, settling into our evening routine. Layla was in the bathroom getting ready for bed when I heard her call out, "Austin, this isn't my phone. The case is different." "Must be Everly's," I called back, not thinking much of it. "We'll return it tomorrow." But then, at 2:17 in the morning, our world exploded. The phone started ringing. Not our house phone, not Layla's cell phone, Everly's phone sitting on our nightstand. I groggily reached for it, assuming it was a wrong number, but Tyler's name flashed across the screen. Then it stopped. Then it started again. And again. By the time I was fully awake, I counted 37 missed calls from Tyler, all within the span of 20 minutes. My heart hammered against my ribs as I shook Layla awake. "Something's wrong," I whispered, showing her the phone. "Tyler's been calling Everly nonstop." Layla sat up immediately, her face pale in the dim light from the phone screen. "Should we answer it?" Before I could respond, heavy knocking echoed through our house. Not the polite rap of a neighbor or the familiar pattern of a friend. This was authoritative, urgent, demanding. I pulled on my robe and hurried downstairs. Layla close behind me. Through the front door's glass panel, I could see the unmistakable silhouettes of uniformed officers. My mouth went dry. In 61 years, I had never had police at my door, never had reason to fear that knock in the night that every parent dreads. "Mr. Austin Morrison?" The officer was young, maybe Tyler's age, with serious eyes that seemed to look right through me. "Yes, that's me. We're looking for Mrs. Everly Morrison. We have reason to believe she may be in danger. Her husband reported her missing approximately 2 hours ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. Missing? Everly had been fine when they left our house, laughing, hugging us goodbye, promising to bring the kids over for Halloween. "She's not here," I managed. They left our house around 9 o'clock. She was with Tyler. The officers exchanged glances. "Sir, Mr. Tyler Morrison is the one who reported her missing. He says she never came home. Layla stepped forward, Everly's phone clutched in her trembling hands. There's been some kind of mistake. We accidentally took her phone after dinner. She's probably trying to call Tyler to tell him where she is. The lead officer's expression softened slightly. Ma'am, if you have her phone, we'd like to take a look at it. With your permission, of course. Sometimes recent calls or messages can help us locate missing persons more quickly. I nodded immediately. Of course, anything to help find her. As the officer took the phone, I caught a glimpse of the lock screen. Dozens of notifications had piled up, missed calls, text messages, app alerts. But what made my blood run cold was seeing Tyler's name appearing over and over again. Not just in the missed calls, but in text messages with timestamps throughout the evening. Why would Tyler be texting her if he thought she was with him? I whispered to Layla. The officer was scrolling through something, his frown deepening with each swipe. Mr. Morrison, were you aware that your daughter-in-law received several large wire transfers today? Wire transfers? The question came out strangled. What kind of wire transfers? According to her banking app, she received 3 separate deposits totaling $47,000 between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. today. Layla gripped my arm so tightly I could feel her nails through my robe. $47,000 on a Tuesday afternoon. While she was preparing to come to our house for dinner, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. There has to be an explanation, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow. Their charity work, maybe donors. Mr. Morrison, the officer interrupted gently, we've run a preliminary check on Hearts for Hope Foundation. According to state records, the organization was dissolved 6 months ago. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. Dissolved 6 months ago? But Tyler had just been telling us about breaking ground on a community center. He had been describing meetings with city council members, talks with contractors, excitement about spring construction. Layla made a small sound beside me, something between a gasp and a sob. I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for someone to explain how this could all be a mistake, how there could be a reasonable explanation for everything we were hearing. We're going to need to speak with your son again, the officer said, and we'll need to hold on to this phone as potential evidence. After they left, Layla and I sat in our living room in stunned silence. The house felt different now, contaminated by questions we didn't want to ask and answers we weren't ready to hear. Austin, Layla finally whispered, her voice barely audible. What if we don't know our son at all? The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching the dread that had settled deep in my chest. Neither Layla nor I had slept after the police left. We spent the remaining hours until dawn sitting at our kitchen table, drinking coffee that had long since gone cold, trying to make sense of what we had learned. Tyler called at 7:15 a.m., just as the sun was struggling through the October clouds. His voice sounded strained, exhausted, nothing like the confident man who had sat at our dinner table less than 12 hours earlier. Dad, thank God you answered. Have you heard anything about Everly? The police said you had her phone. Cor. I gripped the receiver tighter, studying his voice for any hint of deception. This was my son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked to his first day of school. The man I had celebrated when he graduated college, when he married Everly, when he became a father himself. Tyler, where is she? A pause. Too long of a pause. I don't know, Dad. She never came home last night. I waited up until 3 a.m. before I called the police. I was hoping maybe she had come back to your house, or maybe you knew where she went. The police told us about the wire transfers. Silence stretched across the phone line. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, could feel Layla's eyes on me as she stood frozen by the coffee maker. Wire transfers? Tyler's voice had changed. Higher pitched, more careful. What wire transfers? $47,000, Tyler. Received yesterday afternoon while you two were supposedly running charity business. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe the police made a mistake, or maybe someone hacked her accounts. You know how these scams work nowadays. They also told us that Hearts for Hope Foundation was dissolved 6 months ago. This silence was different, heavier. When Tyler finally spoke, his voice cracked. Dad, I can explain everything, but not over the phone. Can you and Mom come over, please? I need to tell you something, and it's complicated." Against every instinct screaming at me to demand answers immediately, I agreed. Within an hour, Layla and I were driving across town to Tyler and Everly's house, a beautiful two-story colonial in one of the city's nicer neighborhoods. I had always been proud that my son could afford such a home through his humanitarian work, though I had never fully understood how charity organizations could be so lucrative. Tyler answered the door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that made him look older than his 34 years. But it was his expression that unsettled me most, the way he couldn't quite meet my gaze, the nervous fidgeting with his wedding ring. "Come in, please. Sit down." He gestured toward the living room, where expensive furniture and artwork created an atmosphere of success and stability. "Can I get you coffee? Water?" "We want answers, Tyler," Layla said firmly, settling onto the couch beside me. "We want to know what's happening to our family." Tyler sank into the chair across from us, his hands clasped tightly together. For a long moment he stared at the floor, and I found myself remembering him as a 7-year-old, caught in some childhood mischief, trying to figure out how to explain his way out of trouble. "The foundation," he began slowly, "ran into some financial difficulties earlier this year. Donors weren't coming through the way we expected, and we had committed to several projects that required upfront funding. So you dissolved it?" "We had to, temporarily. But we've been working to restart everything under a new structure, a new name. The wire transfers Everly received were from investors who want to help us launch the new organization." It sounded reasonable, plausible even. But something in Tyler's tone, the way he delivered the explanation like he had rehearsed it, made my stomach twist. "What investors?" I asked. "Business people who believe in our mission, people who want to see the community center built, who understand that sometimes you have to invest money to make real change happen." $47,000 on a Tuesday afternoon? Tyler's jaw tightened. "Yes, Dad. That's how business works sometimes. Opportunities come up, investors have windows when they can move money around for tax purposes, and you have to be ready to act quickly." Layla leaned forward. "Tyler, where is Everly?" "I think she went to meet with one of the investors to discuss the next phase of funding. She probably stayed at a hotel last night to be close to the meeting location." "Without telling you? Without taking her phone?" "She's been under a lot of stress lately. The financial pressure trying to get everything reorganized. Maybe she just needed some space to think." I watched my son's face as he spoke, searching for the truth in his features. Part of me wanted desperately to believe him. This was Tyler, the boy who had cried when he accidentally stepped on a butterfly, who had spent his allowance buying sandwiches for homeless people downtown. But another part of me, a growing part, recognized that the man sitting across from me was a stranger. "The police will find her," Tyler continued, his voice gaining strength. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation for everything. And once this misunderstanding is cleared up, Everly and I can show you the business plan for the new foundation. You'll see that everything we're doing is legitimate." "Tyler," I said carefully, "I need you to look me in the eye and tell me that you and Everly are not involved in anything illegal." He met my gaze directly, without hesitation. "Dad, I swear to you we are trying to help people. Everything we do is about making the world better for children who don't have the advantages we had growing up." The conviction in his voice almost convinced me. Almost. But as we drove home, Layla voiced the fear that had been growing in my chest since the police left our house the night before. "Austin, he's lying to us." "You don't know that. I know my son. I know how he sounds when he's telling the truth, and that wasn't it." She stared out the window at the passing houses, each one representing families who probably trusted each other, who probably slept soundly at night. "The question is, what is he lying about?" That afternoon I did something I had never done before. I called the bank where Tyler and Everly had their business accounts. I told them I was considering making a large donation to Hearts for Hope Foundation and wanted to verify their tax-exempt status and financial standing. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. "Sir, I'm not showing any active accounts for an organization by that name. We did have accounts for Hearts for Hope Foundation, but they were closed 7 months ago due to insufficient funds and irregular transaction patterns." 7 months ago, not 6 months, as the police had said. Tyler had been lying to us for more than half a year, sitting at our dinner table once a month, describing projects and plans for an organization that no longer existed. When I hung up the phone, I realized that my hands were shaking. At 61 years old, I was learning that the son I had raised, the man I had been proudest of in all my life, was a stranger who could look me in the eye and lie without flinching. But I still had no idea how deep those lies went, or how much they were about to cost our family. 3 days passed with no word from Everly. The police continued their investigation, but Tyler seemed strangely calm about his wife's disappearance. He called us twice daily with updates that weren't really updates at all, just reassurances that everything would work out, that Everly would return soon, that we shouldn't worry. But I was beyond worry. I was consumed by a growing certainty that everything I thought I knew about my son was a lie. On Friday morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I told Layla I was going to the hardware store, but instead I drove to the address Tyler had given us for Hearts for Hope Foundation's office space. I needed to see for myself what my son had built. Needed physical evidence that would either confirm my fears or put them to rest. The address led me to a strip mall on the outskirts of town, wedged between a nail salon and a discount furniture store. Suite 14 was supposed to house the foundation that had filled my son with such passion, the organization that was going to change children's lives. The windows were papered over with old newspaper, and a for-lease sign hung crookedly by the door. I tried the handle anyway, knowing it would be locked, but needing to feel that finality in my hands. "You looking for the charity people?" I turned to find an elderly man sweeping the sidewalk in front of the nail salon. His weathered face held the kind of knowing expression that comes from watching too many businesses come and go. "Yes, Hearts for Hope Foundation. Do you know what happened to them?" He leaned on his broom and shook his head. "Never was no charity there, mister. Young couple rented that space about 2 years ago, said they were starting some kind of business. But I never saw no clients, no employees, nothing that looked like real work happening." My throat felt tight. "What did you see?" "Mostly just the two of them coming and going at odd hours. Sometimes they'd have fancy cars parked out front. Expensive ones, you know. Didn't seem right for people running a charity." He studied my face with sharp eyes. "You a donor or something?" "Something like that," I managed. "Well, they've been gone for months now. Left owing 3 months' rent according to the landlord. He's been trying to release the space ever since." I thanked him and walked back to my car on unsteady legs. No charity, no foundation, no community center for underprivileged children, just an empty storefront and unpaid rent. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the papered-over windows, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with the monthly dinners where Tyler had shared his passion for helping others. Had he been sitting at our table, eating Layla's cooking, describing fictional projects to parents who believed every word? My phone buzzed with a text message. "Tyler? Dad, can you meet me at Riverside Park in an hour? I need to talk to you about something important. Come alone." The park was nearly empty when I arrived, just a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the crisp October afternoon. I found Tyler sitting on a bench overlooking the river, his posture slumped in a way that made him look defeated before our conversation even began. "Dad, thank you for coming." He didn't look at me as I sat down beside him. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise you'll hear me out before you say anything." "I'm listening." He took a shaky breath. "The foundation wasn't what we told you it was." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Even though I had expected them, hearing Tyler finally admit the truth felt like a physical blow. What was it then? It was a way to move money, clean money, that came from questionable sources. His voice was barely above a whisper. Everly had connections, people who needed their cash to look legitimate. We would receive their money through the foundation, then redistribute it back to them through fake grant payments and consulting fees. Money laundering. My son, the man I had raised to understand right from wrong, had been operating a money laundering scheme out of a rented storefront. "How long?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. 2 years, maybe a little more. And the community center, the children's programs, all of it was lies? Tyler finally looked at me, and I saw tears streaming down his face. All of it, Dad. Every story, every project, every passionate speech about helping people. All lies. I stared at the river, watching the water flow past us like time itself, carrying away the last remnants of my illusions about my son. How much money? Over the 2 years, about $600,000 passed through the foundation. $600,000. While Layla and I lived modestly on my pension and Social Security, proud that our son had chosen service over profit, Tyler had been laundering more money than we would see in a decade. "Where's Everly?" Tyler was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "She's not missing, Dad. She took her share of the money and disappeared. $47,000 was her exit payment. Her share. We'd been planning to shut down the operation for months. The heat was getting too intense, too many questions from state regulators. Everly was supposed to wait until after we moved the last batch of money, but she got scared and ran early." I felt something cold settling in my chest. "Tyler, what aren't you telling me?" He turned to face me fully, and I saw something in his expression that made my blood freeze. Not guilt, not remorse, calculation. "Dad, we used your name." "What?" "For credibility. When we set up the foundation, when we applied for tax-exempt status, when we opened the bank accounts. We listed you as a founding board member and financial advisor." He swallowed hard. "Your signature is on documents. Your Social Security number is in the files." The bench beneath me seemed to disappear. My name, my reputation, my Social Security number, all tied to a criminal organization that had laundered $600,000 over 2 years. "You forged my signature?" "We needed someone with a clean background, someone who commanded respect in the community. You're a veteran, Dad. You worked for the city for 30 years. People trust you." I stood up abruptly, my legs unsteady. "Tyler, do you understand what you've done to me? It was supposed to be foolproof. No one was ever supposed to investigate the foundation. It was just supposed to exist on paper until we could shut it down cleanly. But now the police are involved." "Now the police are involved," he confirmed. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, and realized I was looking at a stranger. Not just someone who had made mistakes, but someone who had deliberately and systematically used his own father as a shield for criminal activity. "Dad, I need your help." The words hit me like a slap. After everything he had just confessed, after revealing that he had forged my name and stolen my identity for his criminal enterprise, he still wanted something from me. My help? The police can't find any evidence of wrongdoing if there's no one left to testify about the operation. Everly's gone. If I disappear too, the case dies. But I need money to disappear properly, and I need someone to handle things here while I'm gone. I stared at him in complete disbelief. "You want me to help you run from the police? I want you to help your son avoid going to prison for something that never actually hurt anybody. Tyler, you laundered $600,000. You forged my signature. You used my identity without my permission. You lied to me for over 2 years. Yeah, I know, and I'm sorry. But Dad, if I get arrested, what happens to my kids? What happens to their future?" It was the first time he had mentioned his children since this nightmare began. My grandchildren, innocent in all of this, but whose lives would be shattered if their father went to prison. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you became a criminal." Tyler flinched as if I had struck him. "Dad, please. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm still your son. Family helps family." I looked at this man who shared my name, who carried my DNA, who had once been the brightest light in my life, and I realized that somewhere along the way, he had become someone I didn't recognize at all. "I need time to think," I said finally. As I walked back to my car, I heard Tyler call after me. "Dad, you can't tell anyone about this conversation, not even Mom. If this gets out before I can figure out a plan, it'll destroy all of us." I drove home in silence, my mind reeling with the magnitude of what I had learned. My son wasn't just a liar or a disappointment. He was a criminal who had dragged me into his schemes without my knowledge. And now he wanted me to help him escape justice. But the worst part, the part that made my chest ache with a pain I had never experienced before, was realizing that Tyler felt no genuine remorse for what he had done to me. He was sorry he had been caught, but he wasn't sorry he had used me. And that realization changed everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Layla, listening to her steady breathing, knowing that when morning came, I would have to shatter her world the same way Tyler had shattered mine. For 43 years of marriage, we had shared everything: dreams, disappointments, fears, and hopes. But that night I carried a secret that felt like poison in my chest. Tyler had asked me not to tell anyone, not even my wife. But keeping this from Layla felt like another betrayal, another lie in a web that was already suffocating our family. At 6 a.m., I made the decision that would define the rest of our lives. I gently shook Layla awake. "Honey, we need to talk." She sat up immediately, reading the gravity in my voice. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The empty storefront, the money laundering, the forged signatures, Tyler's plan to disappear. With each revelation, I watched the color drain from her face, watched 40 years of maternal pride crumble into confusion and horror. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Our Tyler did this? Our Tyler did this. And he used your name? Your reputation? For 2 years, Layla. Every month when they came to dinner, when he talked about helping children, when we felt so proud of him, he was lying to our faces." She began to cry then, not the gentle tears of sadness, but the harsh sobs of a woman whose world had just collapsed. I held her as she grieved for the son we thought we knew, for the future we thought we were building, for the family we thought we were. "What are we going to do?" she asked through her tears. "I don't know yet, but I know we can't let him drag us down with him." At 10 a.m. my phone rang. Tyler's name appeared on the screen, but when I answered, it wasn't Tyler's voice I heard. "Mr. Morrison, this is Everly." My grip tightened on the phone. "Everly, where are you? Everyone's looking for you." "I'm safe, Mr. Morrison, and I'm calling because Tyler doesn't know I'm reaching out to you, but I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening." "I already know about the money laundering." A pause. "Do you know about the rest of it?" "What rest?" "Mr. Morrison, the foundation wasn't Tyler's idea, it was mine. And the money we were laundering wasn't just from random criminals, it was from my family." My blood went cold. "Your family?" "My father runs a drug distribution network on the West Coast, has for 20 years. When I married Tyler, my father saw an opportunity to move money through legitimate-looking channels. He offered Tyler $50,000 to set up the foundation and let us use it. $50,000. Tyler had sold his integrity, his family's reputation, and his father's good name for $50,000. Tyler agreed to this? More than agreed. After the first year, when he saw how much money was flowing through, he started demanding a bigger cut. He threatened to expose my father's operation if we didn't make him a full partner. Blackmail. My son hadn't just been laundering drug money. He had been blackmailing the drug dealers for a larger share of their profits. "Everly, why are you telling me this?" "Because Tyler's planning to pin everything on me. He's going to tell the police that I forced him into it, that he was an innocent victim who got manipulated by his criminal wife. But Mr. Morrison, I have recordings. I have evidence that shows Tyler was the one pushing for bigger risks, more money, more involvement." My head was spinning. What kind of evidence? Recorded phone calls where Tyler discusses expanding the operation, bank records that show him transferring money to personal accounts without my knowledge, and documents that prove he was planning to frame me from the beginning. Why would he do that? Because he knew that if everything fell apart, the police would be more likely to believe that a sweet, honest son was corrupted by his criminal wife than that he was a willing partner in drug money laundering. I sank into a chair, the weight of this new revelation crushing down on me. Not only had Tyler been a criminal, but he had been planning to destroy his own wife to save himself. "Everly, what do you want from me?" "I want to make a deal with the police. I'll give them everything. The recordings, the financial records, the contacts with my father's organization. But I need you to know that Tyler isn't the victim he's going to claim to be." After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at nothing. The Tyler who had confessed to me yesterday, the man who had seemed broken and apologetic, had been performing. He had been manipulating me just as skillfully as he had manipulated everyone else. At noon, Tyler arrived at our house unannounced. He walked in without knocking, the way he had when he was a teenager, but the familiarity of the gesture now felt like a violation. "Dad, Mom, we need to talk." Layla looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Tyler, how could you do this to us?" He stopped in the middle of our living room, his expression shifting as he realized we both knew the truth. "Dad, you told her?" "She's my wife, Tyler. We don't keep secrets from each other, unlike some people." His jaw tightened. "Okay, so you both know. That actually makes this easier." He sat down across from us, his posture confident in a way that made my skin crawl. "Here's what's going to happen. The police are going to arrest Everly when they find her, which will be soon. She's going to be charged with running a money laundering operation." "And you?" I asked. "I'm going to be the grieving husband whose wife manipulated him into illegal activities. I'll cooperate with the investigation, express remorse for being so naive, and probably get a suspended sentence and community service." Layla gasped. "Tyler, you can't throw your wife under the bus like that." "Ream." Everly made her choice when she ran. And she's not innocent in this, Mom. Her family are drug dealers, real criminals. I was just trying to make the best of a bad situation. "By blackmailing them for more money," I said quietly. Tyler's confident expression faltered for just a moment. "Who told you that? Does it matter?" He stood up abruptly, his calm facade cracking. "Dad, you need to understand something. This isn't about right and wrong anymore. This is about survival. If I go to prison, what happens to your grandchildren? What happens to the family name?" "The family name?" I felt anger rising in my chest like a tide. "Tyler, you forged my signature on federal documents. You used my social security number to open fraudulent accounts. You've spent 2 years using my reputation to give credibility to a criminal organization. What family name is left to protect?" "I can fix this," he said desperately. "If you just help me manage the situation until things calm down." "Help you how?" "I need you to tell the police that you were aware of the Foundation's activities and that you approved of them, that you thought it was a legitimate charity." I stared at my son in complete disbelief. "You want me to lie to federal investigators?" "I want you to protect your family." "By making myself an accessory to money laundering?" Tyler's mask finally slipped completely, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "Dad, you don't understand the position you're in. Your name is all over these documents. If I go down, you're going down with me. The only way to protect yourself is to help me control the narrative." Layla stood up, her voice shaking with fury. "Are you threatening your own father?" "I'm explaining reality to him." I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't my son anymore. This was a predator wearing my son's face, using my love for him as a weapon against me. "Tyler, get out of my house." "Dad, you're making a mistake. Get out of my house and don't come back until you're ready to face the consequences of what you've done like a man instead of a coward." Tyler stared at me for a long moment, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been genuine fear. "Fine. But when the police come for you, remember that I offered you a way out." After he left, Layla and I sat in the heavy silence of our violated home. The house that had been filled with love and pride and family memories now felt contaminated by Tyler's threats and manipulations. "Austin," Layla said finally, "we have to call the police ourselves, don't we?" I nodded, knowing she was right but feeling like I was signing my own son's death warrant. "We can't let him destroy us to save himself." Here, but as I reached for the phone, I realized that Tyler had been right about one thing. My name was all over those documents. Even if I cooperated fully with the investigation, there was no guarantee that I wouldn't be charged as an accomplice. At 61 years old, I might be facing the destruction of everything I had built over a lifetime, all because I had trusted my son. The weekend passed like a slow-motion nightmare. Layla and I barely spoke, both of us trapped in our own thoughts about what we needed to do. Every time I picked up the phone to call the police, I found myself setting it back down, paralyzed by the magnitude of what that call would mean. Tyler was still my son. Despite everything he had done, despite the lies and manipulation and threats, some part of me couldn't let go of the hope that there might be another way forward. Some part of me still remembered the little boy who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms, who cried when he accidentally stepped on a caterpillar, who told me he wanted to grow up to help people who couldn't help themselves. But on Monday morning, Tyler made the decision for me. I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when my phone rang. An unknown number, but something told me to answer it. Mr. Morrison, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to speak with you about Hearts for Hope Foundation. My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. Of course, Detective. When would be convenient? Actually, sir, we're outside your house right now. Would it be possible for you to come with us for questioning? Through our front window, I could see 2 unmarked cars parked at our curb. Layla appeared beside me, her face pale with understanding. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, sir. But we do have some serious questions about your involvement with the foundation, and we think it would be better to discuss them at the station. I kissed Layla goodbye, not knowing if I would be coming home that evening or if my next phone call would be asking her to find me a lawyer. The police station was exactly what I expected: fluorescent lights, industrial carpet, and the constant buzz of activity that comes with processing humanity's worst impulses. Detective Chen led me to a small interview room where another detective, a heavy-set man named Rodriguez, was already waiting. Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming in voluntarily, Detective Chen began. We're hoping you can help us understand some irregularities we've discovered in the Hearts for Hope Foundation records. I'll help however I can. Detective Rodriguez opened a thick folder and pulled out a stack of documents. According to state filing records, you're listed as a founding board member and financial advisor for the foundation. Your signature appears on the incorporation papers, the tax-exempt application, and the banking agreements. I stared at the documents, seeing my name typed clearly at the bottom of each page, followed by a signature that looked exactly like my own handwriting. The forgery was perfect, so perfect that if I hadn't known better, I might have believed I had actually signed them myself. Mr. Morrison, do you remember signing these documents? This was the moment, the crossroads where I had to choose between protecting my son and protecting myself, between family loyalty and personal integrity, between love and justice. Detective, I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand that this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. For the next 2 hours, I told them everything. The fake foundation, the money laundering operation, Tyler's confession at the park, Everly's phone call revealing the drug money connection, Tyler's attempt to blackmail me into lying to investigators. With each revelation, I felt like I was driving another nail into my son's coffin, but I also felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying was finally being lifted from my shoulders. Detective Chen took notes throughout my statement, occasionally asking for a clarification or additional details. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me carefully. Mr. Morrison, what you're telling us is that your son forged your signature on federal documents and used your identity without your knowledge to establish credibility for a criminal enterprise. That's correct. And when you confronted him about it, he attempted to coerce you into lying to law enforcement to protect him from prosecution. Yes. Are you willing to testify to all of this in court if necessary? I closed my eyes, seeing Tyler's face as a child, as a teenager, as a young man on his wedding day. Then I opened them and saw the documents with my forged signature, remembered his threats, felt again the cold calculation in his voice when he tried to manipulate me. Yes, I'm willing to testify. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you directly, did you have any knowledge of or participation in the money laundering activities conducted through Hearts for Hope Foundation? None whatsoever. Did you authorize your son to use your name or identity in any way related to this organization? No, I did not. And you're willing to submit to a polygraph examination to verify these statements? Absolutely. The detectives exchanged glances, and I could see them making some kind of silent decision. Mr. Morrison, Detective Chen said finally, based on what you've told us and the evidence we've already gathered, we believe you were an unwitting victim of identity theft committed by your own son. However, we may need you to cooperate with our ongoing investigation. Whatever you need. When I got home that evening, Layla was waiting for me with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling cup of tea. What happened? I told them everything. They believe me, but Tyler's going to be arrested. She nodded, as if she had already accepted this inevitability. And us? We're victims, not criminals. But Layla, our lives are about to change completely. That night we talked until dawn about what the future would look like, how we would handle the media attention, how we would explain to friends and neighbors, how we would rebuild our relationship with our grandchildren after their father went to prison. But mostly, we talked about grief, the grief of losing a son not to death, but to choices. The grief of realizing that the man we had raised and loved and been proud of had never really existed. The grief of understanding that sometimes love isn't enough to save someone from themselves. On Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 6:30 a.m. Tyler's number. "Dad, they arrested me last night." His voice was different now, smaller. The confidence and manipulation were gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like the son I remembered. "Tyler, Dad, I know you talked to them. Detective Chen told me you'd been in for questioning." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. "Dad, I need you to know that I never meant for any of this to hurt you. When I used your name, I thought it would just be temporary. I thought I could clean everything up before anyone ever found out." "But Tyler, stop!" "I know you hate me now. I know I've destroyed everything between us, but Dad, please don't let this destroy your relationship with my kids." And there it was, the final manipulation, the last attempt to use my love against me, wrapped in concern for innocent children who would indeed suffer because of their father's choices. Tyler, those children deserve better than a father who's a criminal, and they deserve grandparents who taught them that actions have consequences. Dad, please, if you cut me off completely, you'll never see them again. Everly's family will take them, and they'll disappear forever. Is that really what you want? The threat hung in the air like poison. Tyler wasn't expressing concern for his children. He was using them as hostages. My grandchildren, innocent babies who didn't understand why their father was gone, were being weaponized in one last desperate attempt to control me. "Tyler," I said quietly, "if you use those children as pawns in this game, you'll prove that you're exactly the kind of man who deserves to be in prison. Dad, and if you think threatening me with losing my grandchildren will make me compromise my integrity one more time, then you never knew me at all." I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. Then I sat at my kitchen table and cried for the son I had lost, for the grandchildren whose lives were about to be shattered, and for the family that had been destroyed by greed and lies. But underneath the grief, I felt something else, peace. For the first time in weeks, I had chosen truth over convenience, integrity over comfort, justice over family loyalty. It was the hardest choice I had ever made, but it was also the right choice. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I could look at myself in the mirror without shame. 6 months later, I stood in the hallway outside federal court, watching my son being led away in handcuffs. Tyler had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for money laundering, identity theft, and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Everly received 12 years after the prosecution proved she had been the ringleader of the operation. The trial had been a nightmare of revelation after revelation. We learned that over $600,000 in drug money had flowed through the fake foundation. We learned that Tyler had been skimming additional funds for himself, money that had paid for his house, his cars, his children's private school tuition. We learned that he had been planning to disappear with nearly $200,000, leaving Everly to face the consequences alone. But perhaps most devastating of all, we learned that Tyler showed no genuine remorse for what he had done to his family. Even in his final statement to the court, he blamed everyone but himself, Everly for corrupting him, me for not supporting him, the system for being unfair to first-time offenders. As the courtroom emptied, I felt Layla take my hand. We had aged years in these 6 months, but we had also grown stronger. The lies that had contaminated our family for 2 years were finally gone, replaced by a painful but honest clarity about who we were and what we valued. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. I thought about her question carefully. How did I feel watching my son go to prison, watching the little boy I had taught to ride a bike and helped with homework and walked to his first day of school disappear behind steel bars? Free, I said finally. For the first time in months, I feel free. The week after the sentencing, we received an unexpected visitor. A woman in her 50s knocked on our door, introducing herself as Margaret Chen, Detective Chen's mother. "I hope you don't mind me coming," she said nervously, "but my daughter told me about your situation, and I wanted to share something with you." She explained that her son, Detective Chen's brother, had been addicted to gambling for years. The family had enabled him, covered for him, bailed him out of debt repeatedly, all in the name of family loyalty. It took us years to understand that helping him avoid consequences wasn't helping him at all, she said. It was just teaching him that someone else would always clean up his messes. When we finally stopped enabling him and let him face the full weight of his choices, that's when he finally got the help he needed. She handed me a business card for a support group for families affected by adult children's criminal behavior. "You're not alone in this," she said, "and what you did, choosing integrity over enabling, that took real courage." After she left, Layla and I researched the support group. We discovered there were dozens of families in our city dealing with similar situations, parents whose adult children had chosen criminal paths, spouses whose partners had hidden double lives, grandparents struggling to maintain relationships with grandchildren while setting boundaries with their criminal parents. We started attending the weekly meetings, and slowly we began to rebuild our sense of identity separate from Tyler's choices. We learned that loving someone didn't mean accepting their destructive behavior. We learned that protecting ourselves wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Most importantly, we learned that we could grieve the son we thought we had while still refusing to be victims of the man he actually was. One evening, about 8 months after Tyler's sentencing, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was Tyler calling from prison. "Dad, I've been going to counseling here. Real counseling, not the manipulation tactics I used to use, and I need to tell you something." I braced myself for another attempt at emotional blackmail. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time in years, his voice sounded genuinely broken. "Not sorry I got caught, not sorry things went wrong. Sorry for what I did to you and Mom. Sorry for using your name, your reputation, your love for me as weapons against you." I said nothing, waiting to see if this was another performance. "I know you have no reason to believe me," he continued. "I know I've lied so many times that my word means nothing. But, Dad, I need you to know that when I finally stopped making excuses and started looking at what I had actually done, I realized that I nearly destroyed the two best people in my life. Tyler, please, let me finish. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to visit me or write to me or have anything to do with me ever again. But I needed you to know that in here, away from all the schemes and lies and manipulations, I finally understand what I lost. I lost a father who would have done anything for me, and I lost him because I chose crime over character." Tears were streaming down my face, but I felt no urge to comfort him or minimize his pain. This was what accountability looked like, not asking for absolution, just acknowledging the truth. "I'm working on getting my GED," he said. "And I'm learning a trade, electrical work. When I get out, I'm going to try to build something honest, something real. Not because I expect you to be proud of me, but because I finally understand what you tried to teach me about the difference between right and wrong." After we hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing what I had heard. Was this another manipulation? Another attempt to work his way back into our good graces? Maybe. Tyler had proven himself to be a master manipulator, but maybe not. Maybe 8 years in federal prison, separated from his children and his freedom and the life he had built on lies, was finally teaching him lessons that I had failed to teach him in 34 years of parenting. Either way, it didn't matter. Layla and I had learned to build our happiness on our own foundation, not on Tyler's behavior or choices. Whether he was genuinely changing or still playing games, we were no longer available to be his victims or his enablers. A year later, we made a decision that would have seemed impossible during the darkest days of Tyler's trial. We sold our house and moved to a small town in Montana near Glacier National Park. We used the money from the sale to buy a modest cabin on 5 acres of land, where we could see mountains from our kitchen window and hear nothing but wind through pine trees. The locals knew nothing about our past, nothing about Hearts for Hope Foundation or money laundering or the son who had tried to destroy us. We were simply Austin and Layla Morrison, a retired couple who had come to Montana to enjoy their golden years in peace. I took up woodworking in earnest, building furniture for our cabin and creating pieces to sell at the local farmers market. Layla started a small garden and began volunteering at the local animal shelter. We hiked, we read, we cooked meals together, and we rebuilt our marriage on a foundation of honesty and shared values. Most importantly, we learned that we could be happy without Tyler's approval or presence in our lives. The guilt that had consumed us, the feeling that we had somehow failed as parents, gradually faded as we accepted that we had done our best with the information we had. Tyler's choices were his own, and his consequences were his to bear. On our second anniversary in Montana, I received a letter from Tyler. He had been transferred to a minimum security facility and was 3 years into his sentence. The letter was simple and honest, describing his work in the prison's electrical training program and his participation in a substance abuse program. But what struck me most was what the letter didn't contain. No requests for money, no emotional manipulation, no attempts to minimize his crimes or blame others for his situation. Just a straightforward update from a man who seemed to be learning, finally, how to take responsibility for his life. At the bottom of the letter, he had written, "I know I have no right to expect anything from you, but if you're ever willing, I would like to earn the chance to apologize in person. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to make sure you understand that I know exactly what I did to you and why it was wrong." I showed the letter to Layla, and we talked about it for several days. Finally, we wrote back, not to Tyler, but to the prison chaplain who had included his contact information in the letter. We wanted to know if Tyler's apparent change was genuine or if this was another manipulation attempt. The chaplain called us personally. He had been working with Tyler for 2 years and described him as a man who had finally stopped running from the truth about himself. "I can't promise you that he won't disappoint you again," the chaplain said, "but I can tell you that the man I'm working with now is very different from the man who arrived here 4 years ago." 6 months later, Layla and I made the 12-hour drive to the federal prison in Oregon, where Tyler was serving his sentence. It was the first time we had seen him since his sentencing hearing. The man who walked into the prison visiting room was physically recognizable as our son, but everything else about him was different. His posture was humble, his eyes were clear, and when he spoke, there was no trace of the manipulation or entitlement that had characterized his every interaction with us during the foundation years. "Mom, Dad, thank you for coming," he said simply. "I know you didn't have to." For 3 hours we talked. Tyler told us about his daily routine, his job training, his counseling sessions. He asked about our new life in Montana, about our health, about the support group we had found. He spoke about his children who were living with Everly's sister and his hope that someday he might be able to build an honest relationship with them. But mostly, he apologized. Not the manipulative, excuse-filled apologies of the past, but simple, direct acknowledgments of what he had done wrong and how it had affected us. "I used your love for me as a weapon against you," he said to me. "I took the reputation you spent 60 years building, and I contaminated it with my crimes. I forged your name and stole your identity and then tried to blackmail you into lying to protect me." To Layla, he said, "I sat at your dinner table for 2 years and lied to your face about everything I was doing. I watched you be proud of me for helping children while I was laundering drug money. I let you love someone who didn't exist." When visiting hours ended, Tyler hugged us both, not the desperate, clinging embrace of someone trying to manipulate emotions, but the careful, grateful hug of someone who understood that this might be the last time we would see each other. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, as we prepared to leave. And I don't expect you to wait for me to get out. You've already given me more than I deserved by coming here today. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that you did everything right as parents. My choices were mine, and they don't reflect anything wrong with how you raised me. As we drove back to Montana, Layla and I talked about what we had seen and heard. Was Tyler genuinely changed? Was his remorse real? Did he deserve another chance to be part of our lives? We decided that it didn't matter. Not because we didn't care about Tyler, but because we had learned that our happiness and peace couldn't depend on his choices or behavior. We had built a good life without him, and whether he had changed or not, that life was ours to protect. 6 months later, we received word that Tyler had been accepted into a college program available to prisoners nearing their release. He was studying business ethics and planned to complete a bachelor's degree before his sentence ended. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Today, as I write this, Tyler has served 6 years of his 8-year sentence. He writes to us occasionally, always respectfully, never asking for anything beyond the privilege of maintaining some connection with us. His letters describe a man who is working hard to understand how he became someone capable of such betrayal and who is building the skills to live an honest life when he gets out. Do I believe he's changed? I think he might have. Do I trust him? Not yet, and maybe not ever completely. Do I love him? I love the man he might become, the man he's trying to become. But I no longer confuse love with enabling, and I no longer confuse family loyalty with accepting abuse. Layla and I are happy now, truly happy, in a way we hadn't been for years without realizing it. We wake up each morning in our cabin surrounded by mountains, and we know that our day will be honest and peaceful. We don't have to wonder what lies we're being told or what schemes we're unknowingly supporting. We don't have to walk on eggshells around our own son or question our own judgment about the people we love. We learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to refuse to enable their self-destruction. We learned that protecting yourself from toxic behavior isn't selfish, it's necessary. Most importantly, we learned that it's possible to grieve for the family you thought you had while still building happiness with the family you actually have. At 64 years old, I understand now that raising a child to adulthood doesn't guarantee anything about who they'll choose to become. But it also doesn't make you responsible for their choices once they're grown. Tyler's crimes were his own, his consequences are his to bear, and his redemption, if it comes, will be his to earn. Meanwhile, Layla and I have the rest of our lives to live, and we're going to live them in truth, in peace, and in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, when we were tested, we chose integrity over comfort, justice over enabling, and our own moral compass over family pressure. That choice saved us. And maybe, just maybe, it saved Tyler too.